first it's foreign, right? And someone feels like maybe they're drowning in some sense, or it's too much, or it's overwhelming. And then eventually what happens is I think that folks that I work with end up feeling the foundation beneath their feet. And it's not, I think the thing that really strikes me is it doesn't feel new. It
Mm,
feels like, oh, this has always been here. Like, oh,
mm.
I remember this when I was a kid.
So tell me what you were just saying.
We were talking about our hair struggles.
The hair struggle is real.
Yeah,
And what do you say about fixed identity?
just like how nice it is to I go through these moments where I can tell there's a part of my identity that I'm like either attached to, or it's like it's really become like I'm associated with it. And I love the opportunity to notice that and be like, we're cutting our hair. We're doing the like
Hmm.
change in the wardrobe, or something, you know what I mean? Because it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, it feels like a shell, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting because the reason why I had cut my hair off was I was so tired of being the Jesus archetype. And I don't know if you ever got that, but
I get that all the time. And I was like, I didn't sign up for this with the
I
long hair.
just
I didn't think I was gonna look.
no, I mean, I love Jesus, but I never signed up for this. And I was like, I'm not, I can't walk in his footsteps. That's not what I was here to do. And so, and you and I have similar features. I don't know what your, we'll go into, I don't know what your bloodline is, but we have similar features. And so I think when you have those features and like long, flowy, dark hair, people are immediately looking at you with that Jesus complex.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know what your experience was with it, but I felt like sometimes people would come up to me, especially with the work I do, with like psychedelic work,
Oh,
people are like
yeah.
feeling that archetypal energy to begin with. They feel like it's like this like real deep compliment. They're like, man, you like I'm gonna be like so honored to be seen as Jesus. And I'm like, not me. Like
Yeah, yeah. Well, I always, the way I always see these things is when someone tells me something they love about me, I really hear how much that's theirs. And so I'm moved that it's theirs. Like, oh, it's so sweet that I look like your Jesus to you. Like I'm this
mm,
person to you. Even when someone says, "Oh, Luis, you've helped me so much. You're amazing." I'm like, you think I'm amazing. I don't believe any of it. But it's so lovely that I enjoy their story of me. But it came to a crescendo for me, to a
mm.
pinnacle, because I played Jesus in my friend's opera. And I was like,
No way.
that's it. After this, I'm just cutting, and I shaved my head off after that.
Yeah.
And it felt so free. It's like I released that,
Yeah.
those years
I'm
and
no
years.
longer wearing this Jesus costume.
Like I played Jesus, and that's the last of it. I'm done. And I was thinking of you for this interview, and I was thinking how when you interviewed me last time, I don't know, was it a year ago or something? Was it the
Yeah,
beginning of
something like
this?
that.
Yeah, I think it was a year ago. Uh, I remember seeing you with your beautiful long hair, thinking, "Oh, I miss having my long hair." And then as you were coming on the screen, you had your screensaver up, which is you with beautiful long hair. And then suddenly you came forward, and it's short and it's bleached, and like you're giving me like a 90s fantasy, which I love.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay, interesting."
Hmm.
But then my whole view of you in this moment changed because of that. And that's what you're going for.
Hmm. Isn't
Right?
that funny? The whole like, I love what you were saying earlier about this. I would call it like romantic projection, not in the
Mhm.
literal sense, but just like romanticism. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's freeing when you realize we're all just like doing this like projection thing. It's
Yes.
also like super disappointing that you're like, oh man, like the Disney thing is it's kind of an inner experience. It's not
Tell me
like
what you mean. What's disappointing for you?
well, it's like something like I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a great projection. Like say like yeah, like Luis, you really helped me. You know, like you really changed my life. You know, like maybe if in the past when you could be in that romanticism, you're like, wow, and we could be in this like exchange together, like I
Yeah.
really helped you and like and you were healed and da da da. And then it's like there is that maturity when you grow through like projection that you're like, yeah, you
It's
know,
true. It's
yeah.
true. Well, you lose the high,
Hmm.
because that's what recently happened to me a couple months ago on Instagram. I lost the high of being liked or being hated. And
Mm.
it wasn't that strong to begin with, but it was there. I would feel the rush of someone loving something I said, or the
Hmm.
rush of a bunch of people hating something I said. And then maybe a year ago, I started noticing nothing's happening. You know,
Mm.
and I wasn't numb. I was just so neutral and unattached to it. But
Yeah.
there's like, comparatively, there's a sense of boredom or almost loss when you don't have that
Mm.
big romantic rush, in response to someone's vision of you or some experience.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I feel like it's so, I appreciate you saying that because it's so like, even I almost feel like the realization for that, of that, at least for me, has been like, it's been the realization that even the high wasn't satisfying. Like there
Yes.
wasn't this like grounded grit that was actually, it was like feeding maybe a hungry ghost sort of
Hmm.
like thing, but it wasn't ever satisfying,
That's right.
even when you're getting the thing that you want, you're getting the high of like validation or whatever it is. It's still, there's still like, there's almost waking up to the fact that it's actually not satisfying you.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Have you seen Spirited Away?
No.
Oh, okay. Everyone listening, write down Spirited Away. It's an incredible animation from this wonderful artist, Miyazaki. He makes these beautiful films.
Mhm.
And this film has a character called No Face, who's the embodiment of the Hungry Ghost. And it's just this beautiful fantasy drama animation about this bathhouse where spirits go to get cleansed. And I got to see it on, I guess it's not Broadway, the West End in London, like 2 weeks ago. And they make him into this incredible, like 60-foot monster on the stage. And it was incredible. But when you were saying that, one thing that I learned from that movie and from that experience of the Hungry Ghosts, within myself and with others, is the addiction isn't something that you kind of overcome or have willpower, but it's something that's obsolete. It no longer feels
Mhm.
good.
Yes.
When you embody the rush instead of being taken possessed by it, it's not a pleasurable experience. So I just like how you said that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
and this
love
is how, oh, go ahead.
I love that image too. There's so much beauty in having like the therapeutic element of theater or all
Hmm.
these types of things, like the healing arts as opposed to like healing relegated to like one
Hmm.
avenue of like, I don't know, the clinic or whatever the hell. It's
Yeah.
like to connect to the image and see the image and be like, yeah, that there it is. There it is in me, And I love this. I was just today, I had one client today and we were just talking about this like element of this hungry ghost. And it's so interesting. Yeah, the to be in a position where you want to like get rid of it, exile it, put a top on it, versus like what is it really trying to get at that it's not getting, you
Hmm.
know? Marion Woodman, who I adore, is like a Jungian analyst. Her definition of addiction that I loved was you can never get enough of the thing you think you want, but don't actually need.
Hmm. 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 Yeah,
That's
that's why you
always
keep
like
needing it.
really,
That's why you keep going
yeah.
for it. Yeah.
That's why it's like this massive
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I love that. That's what the character No Face really shows because he starts as this very kind of slim black figure with this interesting white and black face, almost like a mask. And
Mm.
then he turned into this giant creature that cannot stop consuming everything. But he's extremely unhappy. And then this little girl is kind of not, she's the only one not interested in feeding him because everyone that feeds him, he gives them gold. So they're like his enablers. And she's the only one who doesn't want his gold, doesn't want his time, like not interested. And he can't understand why she's not seduced by this the way he is. But
Mm.
it's a beautiful, beautiful story. But I'm with a very beautiful, beautiful man right now named Otto. And I didn't introduce you at all because I just dove in and I'm excited for this because for me, this is a conversation that I'm recording where I'm getting to know you. I
Mm.
don't know you. You had me on your podcast and the questions you asked were so elegant and deep and right to my heart. I thought, I'd like to get to know this person. And everyone I know that knows you tells me that we're supposed to be friends. And so, and I see why, but this is like the public gets to watch us get to know each other right now.
Yeah.
So this is my second time I ever got to sit with you, and so I'm interested in getting to know you and seeing just where this moment takes us. But I want to start by you being able to introduce yourself to my audience. Like, tell us about you. Tell us what you want people to know.
Yeah. I like how open-ended that question too is. It's not like, what do you do for work? Which I'm probably going to answer in that fashion. But no, I love that invitation too, because it's like, no, I feel exactly the same. And it's so funny how many we have so much overlapping community,
Hmm.
and everyone says the same thing. They're like, do you know Luis? Like y'all should definitely be friends. Um, okay, what do I want people to know? Um, let me start with work, because I think that's like what initially connected us. I am, I would say, a psychedelic therapist. That's like the main form of my work. And more specifically, I spend a lot of time talking to people in a therapeutic context for anywhere from a month to years after their work, after their experience, helping them make sense of that experience, helping them embody what happens in those spaces. So, yeah, I spend a lot of time, I would say, in that, in the realm of trying to understand the intersection of like, um, I would say just soul. I'd say
Hmm.
soul is kind of like the main thing that I would use to describe myself. That is like the main thing that I'm interested in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. When you say that, what do you feel?
Soul.
Yeah.
I feel like this cheekiness and this sense of mystery. Like you can't just put your finger on it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we always want to be like, what is it? Soul is this elusive quality that is familiar, always present, all this kind of stuff, but it can't directly be named. You know, it
Hmm.
can't directly be pinned down or mained in that way. Yeah. It's
That's
alive.
what excited me about your identity change was
Mm,
um, I've always said that for me, being human is my drag. Like I feel like just being a human is this costume. And I've always had that relationship that I never quite believed it. And
mhm,
it was kind of at some points in my life, it was skirting along my trauma. I was so depersonalized because of the trauma and what I experienced that I kind of just withdrew from wanting to be human. But then there was this more core feeling that believe I was born with and never really left, which is I can't really pin myself down. Like myself, this thing that witnesses all this, can't really be pinned down. So this body becomes this kind of like sacred joke to me. And it takes away all the charge of any horrible thing that has ever happened or will ever
mm,
happen because it's happening to my body. I'm untouchable, I'm unpinnable. And I just
mhm.
wonder how you relate to that theory or way of viewing yourself or your body, especially with psychedelics.
Especially with psychedelics. Yeah, I think I appreciate that a lot. Maybe, yeah, how do I relate to it personally? I mean, it's exciting to me to be able to uh, hold identity with, to me, like playfulness, spaciousness, and also not pushing it away, you know, to
Hmm.
have that kind of element to it. Because I like what you were saying at the beginning, because it's, yeah, also went through a phase where I was like spiritually kind of trying to reject it. Like I just want to like turn it off, you know,
Hmm.
completely, and just like be removed from my humanity. But I feel like when there's another element of it that is like, I love the concept of drag, you know, like the Jungians say like the ego is the workshop of the soul, but
Mm.
drag feels way more fun to me,
Mm.
you know, like like yeah, like workshop that feels like serious. It's like how about inhabiting many characters in the play, or
That's
I
right.
can really like dance fully. So I think the way that I personally relate to it is yeah, my life force can't be contained to one costume.
Mm. That's
And
right.
not only does it, it won't. it refuses to, which is
Mhm.
kind of sometimes a hard thing for sure. But if I can hold it lightly, it's amazing to see that, like, especially I notice like when I get into like trance states in dance, particularly, there's kind of like new characters that come through, which is like kind of shocking sometimes
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
see that, especially when there's a formed identity, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that when you said it refuses to. I just think of what people consider midlife crises and
Hmm.
breakdowns. And to me, it's those moments of the identity won't hold. And I don't have practice or even the openness of that happening. I've been told, or I believe the identity should hold, but I don't think they're able to. And that's why people have so many experiences of loss that feel traumatic rather than loss that feels regenerative or something new is being created.
Yeah.
And I guess I posture that here with you because music has been my psychedelic. And I would like you to challenge me on that at some point
Mm.
because I have so many people who I love who use psychedelic as medicine, and I have yet to be drawn to it. And I feel like one of those people that loves to say how psychedelic I am naturally as like a cop out to using them. And I truly feel that way. I truly feel like I can taste the music notes as I'm playing them. And when I sit with people that have psychedelic experiences, I feel exactly what they feel in those moments. Like what they're telling me feels so, not the potency of it, but the result of it and the somatic experience of it.
Hmm.
So I'm throwing all this at you because I'm wondering how you hold loss of identity in a therapeutic way, right? Via the psychedelic medicine.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked the question because I've noticed a lot of the work that I do ends up being in exactly that territory. Someone's identity structure totally falling apart. And it kind of, the medicine that we use at the retreat center that I work for is 5-MeO DMT, also known as bufo. And it's such a consistent catalyst of that experience. And it can be like a year long, like you said, if there isn't a lot of, if there's a rigid relationship to that shifting identity,
Mm,
it can be kind of traumatic. It can
mm,
be a traumatic thing to lose your sense of who you know yourself to be overnight, you know?
yeah.
Um, and it leaves you in this disillusioned place where you're kind of like have no idea who you are, which for some people that's exciting. It's like it's the opportunity. It's beautiful. See with new eyes. For other people it's terrifying, right? So for other elements maybe it's terrifying, but um maybe to go back to your question, how do I hold people in that therapeutically? I think the way that I do it is I've been through a lot of processes that one could call like uh, a dimension of psychosis. Spent a lot of time in psychedelic world learning from different teachers. And for me, you know, I've been through that process so many times that incredibly comfortable in it. So
Mm,
if someone's coming to me and they're panicked about it, or they're to me, I would say like drowning in the mystery. I'm I'm like I can just be a hand in the water.
mhm,
Be like, you're not drowning. You can swim. It's okay. It's like, how's the water feel? Just like creating a co-regulatory space with, I would say, the process. And I think the biggest thing that I try to offer is a felt sense of the wisdom of the water that they're in.
mhm,
That there's something here that is nature's guidance. To me, awakening is a natural process. It's not a foreign thing to us.
mhm,
So I think if I can be an anchor to that and someone can feel that and they can recognize it in themselves that, oh, there's something intelligent here that's guiding me. I may not be able to put my finger on exactly what's happening, and this is like very disorienting, but I can feel a sense that this is meaningful. There's something meaningful happening here. That to me is like, if I can transmit that information somehow, particularly somatically, I think that is like the one thing that I want to offer.
mhm.
Um, yeah.
Well, in somatic experiencing, we call it the counter vortex. So there's your client or the person you're working with in this, psychedelic induced psychosis or this state where they're completely disconnected from the reality they had put so much belief into.
Mhm.
And then you are looking at them and reflecting back, nothing wrong is wrong with this. This is safe. This is normal. I've been through this, whether you're saying it or you're just feeling it in your body. And this really beautiful thing happens where their body will start attuning to the parts of you that aren't scared, and then they start anchoring that in themselves. It's like a reflection, right?
Mhm.
It's really like it's beyond spiritual. To me, it's a somatic reparenting. It's like they're completely lost and reborn into this other dimension. Then there's like the mother, father, the sacred parent looking at them, able to say, there's nothing wrong with you. You're going to be just fine with me. And I think in that moment, in the loss of identity, to feel a sense of safety or connection without identity, I mean, I don't know what could be more healing ever. And I guess I wonder, what's your experience witnessing that with people who are strongly identified with their story, with themselves, with their identity when they lose that in the psychedelic experience?
Mhm. It plays out in many different ways. I think it obviously depends on someone's like personal history.
Hmm.
But something that I really see that it offers is, I'm glad that you brought in spiritual, because for me, our connection to the life process, to nature, to the cosmos, that is spirit in a sense. And I think that a lot of times that fundamental foundational relationship is what's being rearticulated. Do I have, maybe I put that on societal structures? Maybe I leaned on the ideas of my culture to hold me in that way, and now there's an opportunity for me to connect, to drill down into like a connection to the fabric of being, to
Hmm.
trust that and to feel that, as opposed to maybe being told that, maybe a church or whatever. I think that's what I've noticed is at first it's foreign, right? And someone feels like maybe they're drowning in some sense, or it's too much, or it's overwhelming. And then eventually what happens is I think that folks that I work with end up feeling the foundation beneath their feet. And it's not, I think the thing that really strikes me is it doesn't feel new. It feels like, oh, this has always been here. Like, oh, I remember this when I was a kid. I remember this feeling. And it starts to like, there's always that moment it gives me chills where I'm like, I think that's really what nature's getting at here, is like, can we get you to your nature, the nature inside you, that was
Yeah.
lost in some way. So really it's like tough love in ways, because it's like, hey, I'm going to take away this thing that you're really
Hmm.
it's keeping you feeling safe, and you're not going to like it. It's going to be really disorienting, but I promise it's love.
Okay, I'm taking away your blankie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested in, how do you prepare, um, or hold the person in that, I would say maybe before, but especially after, where they don't get addicted to the experience and needing to keep experiencing a psychedelic realm because their realm is now suddenly boring and too over identified. How do they
Mm,
integrate that in a way that feels, I don't know, actually, I don't want to say therapeutic, but I guess say something that's a part of them that they can access soberly
mm.
as well when they're not, under the beautiful influence of these medicines. Like, what does that look like?
Honestly, to me, for most folks, myself included, it's slowness. It really has less to do with whenever someone's like, not to shame going back to medicine, because I think there's a lot of ways to use medicine, and
Hmm.
in a context like I sit with the Huni Quinn a lot, ayahuasca tribe, and it's like a prayer. It's like going
Hmm.
to church essentially. But if there's like, yeah, this intention that's coming from a place of lack, like I need to get back to some place. Typically what I've noticed, I usually just direct someone to really slow down, notice what's here. And if they're really lacking in their life, I invite them to take more and more time to have nothing to do. Sit by a tree,
Hmm.
just like, and have nothing around you. More time doing that. spaciousness, subtraction, I think, is the big takeaway. And the more that people can allow the space for that, typically it comes right back. I've never seen that connection be lost. It's usually obscured in some way,
Mm.
typically by, I would say, overstimulation,
Hmm.
and the way of life that we have is usually obscuring it. There's too much noise. There's too much, uh, yeah, there's too much going on, really.
Hey, my friends. I created a space that is affordable, accessible, and anyone is allowed to join anytime, and it's called the Library Membership. The Library Membership is an online private platform that hosts dozens of my webinars, my somatic practices, private mini lectures, and movement practices. There's also a monthly sound healing, and you'll be invited to a weekly Tuesday live mini practice with me and other participants. You'll also be invited to be a live audience member in our monthly HLN team podcast recordings, where you'll take place in the Q&A that happens off air after the episode is filmed. For more information on this membership, click on the link below or go to holisticlifenavigation.com and click on membership and then library. You can join right now and you can cancel or pause your subscription at any time. I look forward to seeing you in there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I was listening to something about the developing brain on social media and with screens, younger kids having cell phones and such. And one thing they were talking about was how boredom is being taken away from these experiences developmentally. And in boredom, you find connection to the universe. When you're sitting there at a tree and you have nothing to focus on and you have nothing to do and there's nothing to take in besides where you are, and there's that slowness, like you're saying, that lack of urgency, you're really able to open up to the relationships of everything around you, spiritual ones, somatic ones, natural ones. So I like that you say that, because the way I hear that is the psychedelic experience is an initiation into feeling that again, something that's been obscured. I prefer that word. And then afterwards, in the lack of obscurity, in the stillness, in the less than, and taking things away, that connection that the psychedelics brought you to is right there inside of you. And that kind of
Mhm.
openness fosters that connection. Is that right?
Oh, 100%. And I think that, like, right now psychedelics are obviously have a resurgence, and there's a lot of mystique, I think, around the experience.
Hmm.
But categorically, the shamanic realm has been accessed mainly by deprivation. They're mainly by,
Mm-hmm.
like, darkness or
Hmm.
silence, or all these things. And
Fasting.
yeah, fasting. I don't think it's exclusive to altering consciousness through a substance, and I think it's much more meta. It's much more, um, I would say, available to everybody, really.
Hmm.
So I tend to think that everyone has a doorway to that realm that is more or less organic to their system, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So if everyone thinks that, like, the psychedelic is the door, the gateway to that, I'm like, yeah, I think some people, their nervous system can't, well, it's way too much,
Hmm.
and for other people it's like, I'm sure with you, with music, it's like, man, you, like, unfocus your eyes a little bit and the wind blows a certain way, and I'm in an experience, right? So it's like, I don't need a huge lever, to get to that place. And I do think that, um yeah, what I've noticed is it's really amplifying what's here and helping you move away from the structures of perception that are keeping you from what's here right now,
Hmm.
you know, in a
Yeah,
much deeper sense.
it's so validating and beautiful to hear you say, unfocus your eyes and look at the wind blow. And as you were saying it, the wind was blowing. And it's one of my practices when I'm in a forest canopy, when the wind blows, I unfocus my eyes and I look at the leaves. And it's like I'm doing it right now as I look out the window. And it's almost like the spirit, the body, the creature that I see when I do that, it's always there. And the moment I unfocus, it's like, oh, hey, there you are. And then when
Mm,
I'm focused, I just see leaves moving. And I'm loving this connection between deprivation and the oh, maybe the awareness of that inner natural state, that place in childhood, that place before we're born, perhaps whatever that place is. I'll call it the mystery, because it always feels better for me.
yeah.
But even in the unfocusing, there's a deprivation of a sense of sight, like clear focused sight that draws lines around shapes of oak leaves to say that's a leaf.
Hmm.
And when I'm deprived of that clarity and it's blurred and I'm looking, I don't know it's a leaf. I just see different shades of green and movements and creatures coming through them. So I'm just saying that because when I said earlier, I want you to challenge me. What I meant by that was I'm uh, I've been lucky to have really good friends who work with plant medicine and psychedelics, and I mean work with thousands of people around the world. And they all say to me, "Yeah, Luis, you're right. You don't need it right now." And I used to think it was a cop out. And so I was kind of looking to these people. And I'm saying this to you for myself and for anyone listening. How do you know you don't require it compared to I'm afraid of it and I'm resisting it?
Mm.
Do you know where do you go with that if you're
Oh,
working with me or somebody like me?
yeah, for sure. Well, I think I always like lean on mythology a lot, like the mythopoetic awareness, which I think is a lot of what you were talking about with the, adjusting perception just enough to see the lines around the leaf to start to blur.
Mm,
And I think that's really what invites that psyche, I would say, in a beautiful way. But I would say to me, it's calling. Am I called to this? Right. So like
mm,
archetypally, a call comes from outside. Call comes from outside in. And what I love about that is there's an entire mythos around the call. And the call is typically, if it's an authentic call, it
mhm,
should scare you.
mm,
And you should say no. You reject it. There's the refusal. That's the first step of any sort of archetypal call is something from outside comes in that's kind of overwhelming to consider. And
mhm,
then the hero says, yeah, no, I'm good. Right. Because it's a call to a new form. It's really another way of saying it's like your soul is saying, hey, it's time to shed skin. It's time to uh, go on an adventure. And you're
mhm,
like, I'm good. I like my life the way that it is. And typically, when I um, if I was working with you, I would just want to explore where you're called right now. Who's calling you? What's calling you? What is there some faint sense of something from outside that's chiming in every once in a while in your life? Are you noticing every once in a while some synchronous thing that keeps trying to like knock at your door, even if it's like remotely vague? And then I want to explore, yeah, what is that? Is there an image? Is there a dream? Is there some felt sense of something? Usually when I ask people that, they immediately know right away. Like, yeah, there's
mm,
definitely something that keeps telling me I need to um call my mother, or I need to
mhm,
like leave this uh place that I'm living or whatever it is.
mhm. I really appreciate that idea of the call that comes from outside and that is really scary. I think that's beautiful because I often teach people the difference between your trauma response or your fear response and intuition.
Mm,
And one of the differences there with intuition is there isn't a lot of urgency behind it. And it's like a take it or leave it. You have all this choice. But in the choice of take it or leave it, like go this way or go this way, there's this confusion because it makes no sense. The fascinating thing about intuition, when we all think about when we're in our intuition, there's no outcome, there's no story, there's no understanding of why I'm doing this. There's just this felt sense of being pulled toward it. So when you say that piece about the call comes from outside, and especially in this case, with psychedelics, and it's scary, it makes sense that the call would come, there'd be a fear, and there's not really a purpose at first, right? It's just kind of pulling you there.
Mhm.
What do you say to people that are in that early place of noticing they're being pulled there, but can't logically make sense of it?
Well, what's interesting about that is like, to me, a big crux of all of this work between like the soul and, I would say, the ego, or like, you know, the dominant form of cognition that we all function at, which is linear thinking, just cognitive, kind of structural. Let's put things in boxes, which is great, right?
Mhm.
But it's become it's dominated at this point
Mhm.
to a degree that's making us sick, I would say. So where the call, mythos, psyche, the soul, it's a circle.
Mhm.
It's nonlinear, right? And it's more of a mosaic. So in that process, I would say, how do I guide someone through it? Well, typically I guide people into first trying to understand what is their relationship like with other parts of their experience outside of their cognition, outside of their linear thinking. When I step out of linear thinking, what's the first thing that I feel? Terror. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, great. So then maybe there are other elements of my soul that are operating in my instinct, in my emotional body, that I've exiled because they terrify me, right? So like that's where I would start, is what's my relationship like to the edge of the place that I call home, or my dominant way of walking through the world? Is that
Mhm.
edge terror? It's like, let's just like, I just want to slowly approach it, and get
That's
to,
really great. That's what
yeah,
I love. That's what I love about somatic work because it's that piece there is such a great kind of diagnostic and even preparatory step of how does this person even experience in their own life day to day being outside linear thought. If they're terrified with that, it gives me a sense of how they're going to experience ayahuasca. Like it gives
yes.
you a sense to work with that, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think sometimes people will go into this place when they don't work with someone, where they're so maybe tired of being caught in the shell that they're in, but they don't know how to get out of it yet, that
Hmm.
they'll throw themselves off the cliff
Hmm.
into an ayahuasca experience. And that has such a rebound effect
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
really isn't, it can help, but sometimes it does more harm than good. So I really do think that it's something I really love about somatics or any sort of like trauma informed work, is it's like, all right, smallest bite first.
Yes.
Let us like take the smallest step first, as opposed to like, let me force or shame myself into like breaking out of this,
Hmm.
you
Yeah, that's
know?
the practice of titration.
Yeah.
And I love that because this speaks to capacity. What's my capacity to be outside of my everyday identity?
Mm.
And if you're working with someone that has zero capacity to maybe cut their hair or wear a different kind of outfit, or even I always love playing with people politically and seeing, like, if you're a really left-leaning person, what's your capacity to watch 5 minutes of right-wing media or vice versa? Like, I'm always fascinated with that because I
Yeah.
want to see what's the person's nervous system capacity to be flexible into different truths and realms. And if I was working with someone with psychedelics and that kind of plant medicine, I'd be really playing with, well, how do you do on your own without assistance of medicine, with thinking outside the box you're used to being in?
Yeah.
And that tells you what their body's capacity is for handling those different realities.
100%. And I love that too, because I think that I think a big piece of what I'm hearing when you say that is like, is identity. So being like,
Hmm.
can this person does this person have the capacity? Does this ego have the capacity?
Hmm.
Versus, something I adore about psychedelic work is it's inherently spiritual. So it gets you in tune with an identity that is outside of that structure,
Hmm.
right? And whether it's IFS connecting to self, or somatics, or plant medicine, if you to me, so much of it hinges on that like relationship to greater self,
Hmm.
relationship to spiritual body, relationship to something that is like outside of this wheelhouse, that is a felt sense, not something someone's telling me, but I can recognize it in myself. because that is to me that creates tremendous capacity
Hmm.
for each
Hmm.
one of these characters to not be like wearing or carrying the weight of having to hold itself together, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think when you're saying that, I was seeing images of myself through my childhood and the different experiences I had that were really painful. And I see trauma as an initiatory experience. I don't see it as something that went wrong. I don't see it as even something that's unjust. I believe there are things that are unjust, but trauma for me is it's initiatory because this energy from this mysterious place, floods your body and takes over your body. You become possessed by this
Hmm.
electricity. It's an extremely spiritual, superhuman experience that happens. And so when that happens over and over again, developmentally, especially the way it happened with me surrounding identity and body and such, everything I thought was true or I thought I was kept breaking down. And so for me, that developmental experience with trauma was in and of itself a psychedelic experience. I was being thrusted outside of the reality I thought was true for myself or for other people. And even though I was young, I didn't have a guide, so I wasn't able to hold that the right way. It traumatized me because there was no integration. But when the integration came later on, oh my goodness, it created such a capacity for many truths, even those that contradict, to exist together. And it's hard for me to have a binary way of thinking about anything, I think,
Hmm.
from those experiences. And so I guess I wonder for yourself, not even clients, have you found the same outcome when you go into your psychedelic experiences, when you've had experiences of psychosis? Have you come out in an integrated sense of being really, when I say open minded, I mean not identified with a certain story being absolute or not? How do you navigate that now?
I love that question. And I love that you brought in initiation, because to me, initiation is an idea that brings in this other less linear way of looking at things,
Mhm.
non-dual, like,
Yeah.
and it makes so much more space for ambiguity, resilience, pain being not something that needs to be eradicated. Even devastating
Hmm.
things are a part of the life story,
That's
and
right.
aren't things that need to be eradicated, and almost like it's encouraging. Initiation is so encouraging, I think, to the spirit, to the character of the soul. For me, I think going through that process, I think what it really instilled in me was a sense of love for
Mhm.
mystery and ambiguity, and a sense of I don't know. I don't know if this is like there's so many times where I'm going through something and I'm like, why is this happening? I hate this. This is like shouldn't be happening. And then that sense, that felt sense comes in that's like, you have no idea. You have no this could be the
I love it.
best thing.
Yeah, love it. Even when you say you have no idea, like the humility and
Mhm,
the wisdom and the open surrender to it, it made me laugh because it was so pleasurable.
mhm,
Like I felt the pleasure move through my body. Like, yes, you have no idea. That is so
mhm.
true for me.
Yeah. And I feel personally, this is my own personal beliefs. I might trigger people because I know
Oh,
God is
bring it
in
on,
there.
baby. Let's trigger them on.
Cool.
Let's trigger. I've given them plenty tools to work with their triggers. So go for it.
I love the word God. I think I like the idea of reclaiming this word. Um, I really resonate with it. And an image I really resonate with is growing up for us as adults, and humanity to me is I like to think of as like a very young species.
Mhm.
And I like the idea of us being like children in like these suits that are like way too big for us. And we're just like walking around like with our briefcases and like trying to be adults or whatever that is. And life as it happens traumatically, as it happens intensely, or however it is, this mysterious element of the way of being the river flowing, it's presenting itself, life events are just happening out of our control. To me, it's like we are children of this process.
Hmm.
And when that humility comes in for me, it's a reminder that I'm a child spiritually in this process.
Hmm.
And as soon as I have this conviction of like, this painful thing happened to me and it shouldn't have happened and all this, and like, that's
Yeah.
valid, it totally is. And I hear you. And I also like can hold it as like, baby, like, like maybe you're like 7 in
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
this process, as opposed to like the righteousness of, I'm sure that I know what life is doing on life's terms. I'm not sure. I have no idea, you know, but if I can feel the connection to it, there's some love there that I
Hmm.
think will carry me into an ability to trust and follow it enough to say, maybe I don't know what's happening here. Maybe I don't know the process I'm in, and
Yeah.
maybe I can lean in a little bit.
Yeah. Do you know the work of Byron Katie? Have you ever heard of that?
Love Byron Katie. Yeah.
Okay, well, of course you do. When you were saying that, I was getting flashbacks to when sometimes I would do the work with clients in one-on-one practice many years ago. People that wanted to do the work, I wouldn't like make them do it because it's such a radical thing. It's like a
Totally. No,
psychedelic for the
no, it
ego.
is.
But there was always when you did a worksheet at the very end of it, the thing that you start. So in the beginning of the worksheet, there's always the thing that shouldn't have happened. And you write down like Tom shouldn't scream in my face, right?
Mhm.
Then at the very end of the worksheet, it's always I look forward to Tom screaming in my face. And I would have so much giddy pleasure for the clients that wanted to do the worksheets because to see them go to the place of it should happen that I crashed my car. It should happen that I got evicted. It should happen that my husband cheated on me. It was it was like I was sitting in front of a literal God, you know? It really felt that way, and it still does when it happens. It feels that way when it happens to me. When I notice like, "Oh, she shouldn't say that." I'm like, "No, she should say that." It's like I feel God speaking through my body,
Mhm.
and in my mind.
Yeah.
And so I love that child analogy you gave because when I go to that place of no, it should happen because I don't know why it is, but it should because it did happen. It's like I'm letting the universe swaddle me instead of like screaming and kicking away from it.
Yeah.
Is that your
Yeah.
experience too?
100%.
So lovely, isn't it?
100%. Yeah. And it's like, as soon as I get like, and I'll let myself stomp my feet. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I
Have
can
that
be
tantrum.
so pissed at God. And then eventually I'll be like, that's like, are you done? You good? You don't
That's
have to
right.
be.
That's right.
It's,
That's right.
yeah.
No, that's why I can get with. I'm not a religious person, but I can get with it. Like I understand the statements of like God take the wheel or like God's unconditional love or
Totally.
it's in God's hands. Like it's so true. I mean, you can kick and scream and God doesn't leave you. It's amazing. The
It's amazing.
universe that like when you said that, it was beautiful because I'm teaching this parenting group right now and part of the thing I teach parents is what you just said. Like witness your child having the tantrum, let them have the agency of expressing their hatred for you not giving them a cookie or their bedtime came up or they have to brush their teeth. And when you can stay soft and witness them, when you have the capacity to witness their like vitriolic rage toward you, eventually something softens in them and they realize they can just fall into your arms, and
Mhm.
and cry. And it's the same thing on a spiritual cosmic level that you're expressing here. It's like my fists are pointed at the sky, at the lightning. The lightning doesn't care. It's like I'm cool. You be angry. I'm here when you're done. And
Mm.
there's something so settling and comforting about that for me.
100%. And I love this, yeah, like acknowledgement of the wisdom of religion, because I think
Hmm.
something I'm so passionate about in this work is the spirit of religion,
Hmm.
spirit of the teachings that are
Hmm.
there, the
Yeah.
spirit of conceptually relating to life in terms of the cosmos, in terms of the whole the totality of being, or I like to put it as like, how do we relate to the tradition of existence,
Yeah.
And I really am passionate about reclaiming the baby in the bathwater there, because
Hmm.
it is obviously these structures are like outdated and have done tons of harm and are dead, I would say, in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. but the spirit we still
Yes.
need, absolutely. And I think this type of work really reclaims the spirit in a tremendous way, in a creative
Hmm.
way, in a enlivening way, an animistic way.
I couldn't agree more. I was raised Catholic and I went to a private Catholic school, and Catholic schools are so incredibly rigid in their dogma and their teachings.
Totally.
And we would have, the way you would go to like gym class, we would have mass. And so there would be a hallway that connected the school to the church, and you would go to church, sometimes a couple times a day. But I remember sitting in the church, and I've had mystic spiritual experiences almost every time I was in that church, but they were so beyond logic and language and comprehension. They were so somatic and so spiritual
Hmm.
that they came up against the dogma and the words and like the harm, as you would say, that the structure created. But in the spirit of what was coming through there, it was gorgeous and it was so powerful and it was so natural. It was so pagan. And so I never hated religion. I didn't like the structure, but
Hmm.
the spirit of it, like you're saying, it really does get rekindled in this. I'm going back to your word deprivation because I'm loving that word so much.
Hmm.
Even in the work of recovering from trauma, it's the deprivation of excessive charge that lets the body settle and metabolize what it's already holding. So even in the deprivation of the dogma, there's just the spiritual experience of whatever's coming through
Ooh.
that church, right?
Yeah, that just gave me chills. Yes. I love this word deprivation. Yeah, because 100 it's like the draining out of
Yes.
what needs to pass through. And
Yes.
so much of it is like I see so often people like, what should I do to integrate? I need to like meditation practice right now. Da, da,
Yes.
da. It's like, is it an edge for you to do nothing,
Hmm.
to have less? But yeah, I think to me it's a draining out of what is dead to make room for, to me spirit is just what's alive, the
Yeah.
living being presence of existence. And if there's a static dead thing, I recently went to spend some time with Josh Schry from the Emerald podcast. I don't know if
Oh
you've
yeah,
heard of his
someone
work.
had sent me something of his recently.
Yeah, really good
There's a lot
stuff.
of ancestral work, right?
Really into animism.
Man,
And
that's what. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
but something he said is he was talking like archetypally about our times and what kind of world we're living in, all these types of things. And he said, how do we welcome the end of the world?
Mm,
How do we we say, in a culture that the mythos of capitalism is endless growth.
hmm.
It's a growth fantasy. It's just
Hmm.
we will grow into the sun forever, right? How do we value decomposition,
Hmm.
deterioration, deprivation, death, things being taken, down, and it's
Yes.
almost like because we don't value those things, if they're taken away by a psychedelic experience or a confrontation with divorce or something in life, right? It's inevitably it reveals that this thing that you thought was there is dead, that the life has left it. That can be traumatic, but it's only so far as I've drifted from the spirit. I've drifted
Hmm.
from the aliveness that's present. And I think that's why somatic work is so resurgent right now, because it's that baby in the bathwater. It reconnects us to the spirit of like what's alive right now, what's here
Hmm.
right now. And
Hmm.
that might be a tremendous amount of grief. That might
Hmm.
be, whatever, but it's alive and it's true in that sense.
Absolutely. That's why the end of the world never bothers me. When there's all this kind of clamoring and pain, and especially during presidential election years, everyone's talking about a story of the end. It's all like each side is telling their story about the end if the other side gets in. And the end isn't seductive enough to scare me because the end is like comforting for me, right? Not like in a way of I want to annihilate myself or society, but in a
Mhm.
way of I'm really comfortable with composting. I'm really comfortable with decomposition. I'm comfortable with decay. I'm comfortable with like retraction and deprivation. I'm comfortable with deprivation. So I like how you say this growth fantasy that we've all been bathed in. Even seemingly the most radical people who oppose society are still in a cycle of growth of their own. And what's it like to just feel the deprivation, even the pausing of growth? And when you bring in your practice, especially the integration work, like when you said, can people do less after these experiences? That's, I think, so important and so easily undervalued, is to give people less to do. And that's where that I'm talking about, that even in alternative spaces, the growth fantasy is alive and well, because you want more to do, to heal, to enlighten, to get through your grief, whatever it is. But it's in the deprivation where you get in touch with what's actually alive.
Yeah.
Whereas the growth is like an avoidance sometimes of what's actually alive.
Mhm.
So I'm just loving, I'm going to be riffing on this deprivation word for a little while, thanks to you. I have to stop talking to you because of the time, even though I really want to keep talking to you. So I want people just that are listening to hear, how can they work with you? How can they find you? What do you want them to know about that?
Yeah, I can leave you some links to my website, also the website of the retreat that I work for, as well as I work for an education platform that does like harm reduction education around 5-MeO, DMT, and Bufo, because there's a lot of harm being done in that space by people in many plant medicine spaces, just facilitating who haven't gone through the initiatory rites of passage to be doing so.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so we have like free resources, integration circles, all that kind of support for psychedelic support. So yeah,
Where's your retreat center? Where is that?
Tepoztlan, Mexico.
Tepoztlan. Okay, just people listening so they can orient to where the location is. Beautiful. Yeah, we'll put links in the episode details so people can reach out to you. Where are you living now, if you want to say?
I'm in Crown Heights.
Oh, cool. You're in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Next time I'm in the city, we need to get together. Let's try to make that happen.
I would love that. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, my beautiful brother, for being here with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'll see you soon.
That's the end of today's episode. Now let's take a moment to notice where we feel the episode in our bodies. Close your eyes. Take a breath. And let whatever wants to come up, come up. And remember, those sensations hold the wisdom that we're looking for. If you want to go deeper, visit holisticlifenavigation.com.